The British government has just announced that it will hold a referendum on whether to leave the European Union.
We will give the British people a referendum with a very simple in or out choice.
But what does leaving the EU really mean? There are a few scenarios for what could happen. The first is total independence. Britain becomes just another country that sells to the EU but doesn't have to follow any of its silly rules. Just like the United States. This sounds empowered, like Britain is finally releasing itself from the shackles of bureaucrats in Brussels. But what it really means is that Britain would have to negotiate everything it sells to Europe on a case-by-case basis. This type of complicated bargaining leads to real costs. US companies pay a 10% tariff on any car they sell in the EU. Tariffs on clothing are 30%. This scenario could cost Britain as much as 14% of its GDP. That's as much as Greece lost in the first 4 years of the financial crisis. Alternatively, Britain could leave the EU, but stay in the European Free Trade Area. Under this scenario, Britain becomes Norway. It still buys and sells from Europe, but it isn't a member of the club anymore. The only problem is, this doesn't actually get Britain out of European control. Members of the European Free Trade Area still have to contribute to the EU budget, and they still have to follow EU regulations on everything they sell in Europe. Remember those rules about bendy bananas? And how Britain had to remove the Union Jack from food packaging? We would still have to follow those rules. We just wouldn't have a say in making them anymore. The third option is for Britain to negotiate a special deal, a bilateral trade agreement custom made for its own economy. Under this scenario, Britain becomes Switzerland. It's not officially a member of the European Free Trade Area or the EU, but it still gets all the benefits of selling its goods there. The problem with this scenario, though, is negotiating power. According to Brussels, the market can't be divided up sector by sector. If you want free trade, you have to agree to open up other parts of your market as well, including the labour market. This is exactly what happened to Switzerland. In 2014, Swiss voters demanded restrictions on EU migration. But Brussels said no. If Switzerland wanted European trade, they had to take European workers. Switzerland, as a single country, it just didn't have the negotiating power to stand up to 28 other European states at once. Most people who want Britain to leave the EU want freer trade and stricter immigration. But with the EU facing an unprecedented migration crisis, it's unlikely that Britain can get both. Maybe the EU is too rigid and boring. Maybe it does need to adapt as the world changes around it. Maybe the exact thing it needs is a big, liberal, pragmatic member to push it in that direction and to do it from the inside. I wonder who that could be.